Welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons at the GEOINT 2024 Symposium here in Orlando, Florida, and I have the pleasure of talking with Terry Busch. Terry, you're a legend in the industry, and I'm excited to have you on. And for those of our audience that doesn't know who you are, would you mind giving us a brief introduction, maybe some of your background,
Sure.
how you got involved with the geospatial industry?
Sure,
I'm sure you've seen a lot.
Absolutely. I started as a military geographer in the 90s. I came out of the satellite imagery industry, and I was hired because there was a thing that had been invented called the internet. And someone had the great idea in the Marine Corps to put maps on the internet. Remember, there's no Google Maps. There's no interactive mapping at all. So I started to build a program for the Marine Corps to disseminate maps around the world. And we moved into the late 90s, and the project didn't have much attention or much steam until 9/11. At which point in time, we needed to move a lot of data around the world in a hurry. And we were able to overcome some of those, we call it DDIL today, but some of those constraints on bandwidth and communications, because every map we made, we compressed about 100 times, and we could send it directly to a plotter in Afghanistan.
Okay.
So my first great claim to fame was internet maps direct to plotter.
Nice.
Then it became build bigger, better web maps. So I moved over to DIA eventually after doing a little work in Homeland Security, some post 9/11 work. And at DIA, we took the concept and said, hey, let's get all of the geospatial information together, ready to use for everyone. At that point in time, NEMA NGA was not in the internet business, as shocking as this sounds today. In fact, we had a famous letter from the deputy director of NEMA, now NGA, saying, you guys at DIA go ahead, we have no interest in that kind of thing. So we built a large interactive web presence, which gained a lot of attraction. Everybody needed map data. At that time, you had to load it from soft copy, and we were really the first ones to have this in hard copy. And then things began to accelerate because it becomes a begat story. After that, we noticed Open Geospatial Consortium had web-based standards, and we said, well, let's implement those, because not everybody in our community was in the same commercial software atmosphere. And as soon as we put up the first web mapping service and web feature service, things kind of exploded. Our usage went up 200-fold, 300-fold.
Well, that's not just about capabilities.
Yep.
What did you actually enable the community to do?
So we put every cartographic and geographic product that NGA and the Defense Intelligence community had online. And then we built a tile cache, like Google Maps, of the entire thing. By the way, I did that all in 2009. What you now know as AWS, it was just Amazon Cloud back then. It cost $30,000. You
Wow.
couldn't do it for $30,000 today. So we made 3 trillion pixels of data in about 3 hours.
So what you actually did is enable accessibility,
We
right?
enabled ease of use and accessibility, and we got beyond the empowered geospatial user to all users, right?
Okay.
So that's the part of this. And once we began to do that, kind of the Google Maps, Google Earth revolution happened. Like online mapping then became commonplace. We all had it. We were moving into smartphones at that point in time. And we kind of said, what's next? And when we said what's next, what we looked at was really social media. We noticed in social media that a lot of content had geotags in it. So we said, well, let's get that. So we did. We built a collection of data to bring all that data together, and it was amazingly powerful. So then, instead of having kind of what was archival, what we knew about, we began to see what was breaking news around the world. It was almost an accidental discovery. So social media was so prolific so quickly, we could see Arab Spring happening in real time. That was a huge breakthrough for the intelligence community, right? Interestingly, each country was a different social media story. One country was Facebook, another country was YouTube, another country was Twitter. I can't remember how it all went down. And that begat this understanding of this global ability to interpret geospatially all the world events that were happening. But we had to worry about spoofing, we had to worry about error, we had to worry a lot about privacy
Right.
and making sure we were doing the right ethical thing. So in the middle of this is a lot of time spent with lawyers and general counsel and a lot of deep dive discussion about what was appropriate use long before we got into what, the ethics of AI today. So along the way, that enabled us to do great mission things. Once we began to have the big data, it freed our geospatial analysts to do data science. We now had billions of records that required really advanced spatial statistical understanding to make meaning out of. So that enabled a whole new wave of geo data science. Remember, we didn't have the term data science 20 years ago.
Right.
But most of us, because we were social science guys coming out of geography, we had statistics in our background, right? We knew how to make inferences against data. It was satellite imagery, it was vector data. Now, all of a sudden, we had all this new data, but we knew the parlor tricks to how to get access to it, right? You hear terms like guilty by geography or pattern of life, right? That tradecraft was simply geospatial tradecraft applied to these new forms of data, and it was very, very powerful, very, very effective. So because we could break that news and break that intelligence analysis, all of a sudden, we went from a GIS shop to, hey, we're in the presidential daily brief. Hey, we're everybody's favorite place to go to get good intelligence. So I enjoyed this very, very rich career. Then, like a lot of us, I was promoted above my level of competency. I was made the chief data officer at DIA, and then I was asked to lead large enterprise programs like Mars and other even higher order concepts and very big enterprise scaling level programs. So I was very fortunate to start as a geo guy and end up running major systems of acquisition for the government. I had a great job and a great career.
That's incredible. That's amazing to hear, and a great success story too. And as we fast forward to now, looking at something like the GEOINT symposium, and as it parallels your career, there's a lot of technology that's led to where we are now that you've just talked about.
Right.
And as you walk through, as you are now through a conference like this, as the conference is today, are there any technologies that surprise you, impress you as you're walking through the floor, and maybe you're like, well, you're starting to get excited about too?
I'll start with the proliferation of OpenStreetMaps. It's probably the most valuable data set. It's the world's largest crowdsourced data set. Everybody here uses it. That gives us the ground truth that it enables this. Right here in front of us, we have a proliferation of small sats, right? This is wonderful. We are now observing the Earth in ways we could never do. It almost continuous persistence. Every spot on the Earth is now imaged within minutes every day, right? It's created a lot of data, but we also need to know what we're looking at on the ground, right? We need the coordination of ground truth and that observable to get to a more objective truth. So those are enabling things. I love that scaleless computing. I love the move into AI, right? There's a ton we can do there. And we're just on the beginning of geo-based AI. Yes, we're using it for gazetteering. Yes, we're using it for navigation. But there's a lot more we're going to get into. Most important to me is that we're taking all this data and making very good, very important insights in the world, right? That to me is making meaning of the collected data is the most important part. That's the part of this. The analysis is always the key for me.
Okay. Where do you feel like the industry has room to improve?
Definitely analytical tools can be reimagined. We have to combine more machine learning, more scalability. The data is outpacing the analytical tools, right? To do an analytic today in a GIS from some of our bigger data sources, you are now downshifting that data. You're taking a subset of the data just to work inside of the GIS. The GIS is not able to work with billions of records at a time, right? So there's room to improve there. Secondly, on the AI ML side is we need to get good, accurate ways to do analysis in AI, understanding that AI is not perfect, turnkey, discrete technology. AI it's iterative, it drifts, it changes on you. Data is very dynamic. So my lessons learned in AI for everybody who will listen, having done a lot of this, is your data is going to move. You're going to get confirmation bias. You're going to get drift. So you're always iterating your model. Your model's never fixed, right? So I think that has a lot of promise. I think, we see advances in computer vision, but really not contextualization. I can count the planes on the runway, but I'm not also looking at all the other context of what's going on. Are those planes ready to fly? Are they in a training mode? Are they in for repair? We need to look at all of the data around that to make better assessments than 5 planes today, 7 planes tomorrow. We need to do better insights of what we're doing.
All right, you just highlighted some of the technologies that you feel are up and coming, where the industry has to improve on and grow. Where do you see it going in the next 5 years?
We made our first machine learning model in 2012, and the then Deputy Director of National Intelligence said, in 5 years, this will seem very quaint. It's 10 plus years later, and that has not been replaced. We have so much growth to do in advanced analytics and data science. We are now at a level where we have global collections of data that we can do global insights instantaneously, and we're not doing nearly enough of that. That is where I think in 5 years from now, we'll be able to say is, hey, I can detect change in environmental layers and military readiness layers and force protection layers in a more instantaneous basis, but it requires some paradigm shift in the way we do analysis now, which is still analyst desktop focused.
Well, so there's always this new emphasis on new data, about the providers collecting new data, adding to the data, and obviously there's going to be always going to be a need for new data.
Right.
But do you feel like there's an under-emphasis on archive data? Or maybe people aren't focused on the global data sets that existed previously and what to do with it. I'll give you an example, almost like recreating the wheel on tradecraft, especially what's going on in machine learning. We've had critical infrastructure tradecraft for years from an imagery analysis standpoint.
Right.
We almost seem like we're recreating the wheel, adding new, we're almost reinventing the critical infrastructure ontology just by nature of what machine learning is trying to do. How do you feel about that? We'll call it culture of how things are now compared to what tradecraft's traditionally been.
So archiving is important because you need the baseline to detect the change. Every industry you see here, if you were to, in my opinion, take it to its bare root essential, what is the primacy of what that tool does? It's change detection. So if you don't have what was before, you don't know what's changed. The problem is archiving is expensive, especially in a cloud paradigm, right? We have some archival cold storage methodologies today, but it's still a recurring cost model that is unfortunate because no one wants to pay for archival. So that's important. The second on the tradecraft side is we have lost tradecraft, right? Because it's so diverse and so disparate. I was in Hawaii 6 months ago talking to some great geospatial guys out there, and I was reminding them of use cases, and they're like, this is a great use cases. Who's doing that? And I said, you did 10 years ago. And they're like, what? I said, some of the most groundbreaking work done was literally here, and it was lost because there was no way to preserve the tradecraft, right? Now we have Git, we have Jira, we have tools to preserve some of that tradecraft, but it's not enough. One of the things I think our professional societies could do is work on the archiving of methodology and tradecraft a lot more, right?
More on the tradecraft archiving, less on the data archiving.
Yeah, well, the data archiving is important. It's just hard and expensive, and no one has a taste for it except National Archives, which does say you have to preserve your data for 50 years.
Okay.
Good luck with that, everyone. Right. I didn't do it as chief data officer.
Which probably emphasizes this continued need for workforce development. How do we capture the knowledge that's being lost with the generational shift or transitioning workforce that's aging out, that actually established a lot of the tradecraft, trained on traditional methodologies, and how do we transfer that knowledge to the younger workforce with all this technology coming online, right?
It's hard. We can start with data literacy, and there's not enough data literacy out there, right? There was a study done, and I'm not kidding, this actually happened at another agency that said, how many of our hirees know basic statistics? So they went to all the grad schools that the intelligence committee hires from. You're required, in your poli-sci or whatever program, to have the statistics class at every university we hire from except for Columbia. So they can't come in and say, I don't know what a standard deviation is. They know what it is, right? We know this. They don't want to do it. So creating an allure around quantitative analysis, data-driven analysis, making it sexy and exciting is one way we have to use our results and say these are very powerful and promote those and highlight those to draw those communities to it, right? Otherwise, they'll revert to even older qualitative methodologies, which in the intelligence community can be very analog based. So there's a lot of work to be done there. We can make better tooling. We have improved from the buttonology of 10 years ago, where you would have all these buttons that you'd have to learn and go to class to push, right? We're getting closer to more of, an app kind of mentality where it's all intuitive, right? Everything is intuitive. UX design has improved to enable analysis, but within what we do in geospatial, there's so many tools. There's so much spatial thinking that we have to convey through our tooling. It's not perfect, and there's room for improvement there.
Excellent. Well, as we wrap up, do you have any last-minute words of wisdom to provide our audience about your insights into the geospatial industry? Perhaps maybe words of inspiration to help young people or graduating college students or perhaps transitioning military be inspired to continue into our workforce?
Rely on your elders. No, seriously, no one believed in what I was doing when I started. I started to nag my bosses and pester them and promote. And I got started on building all of these technologies, not because they believed in the technology. They gave me money to go away, or they gave me time to go away and work on things. And that created a spirit of innovation. And my personal philosophy in any shop that I've ever worked in and led other analysts is 75 to 80% of the time, I need you to do what the mission requires you to do. The other 20% of the time, go as far as you possibly can. I don't care. I've got your back. I will stand up for you, right? You cannot go wrong because I wasn't able to do it, and I'm going to pay it forward and let you do it. That's where the innovation is. It's right at that analyst mission, right? They see and think new ideas. We have to create room for those to be realized and come true.
Right.
So that's a very strong personal philosophy that I carry and promulgate to anyone who will listen.
Awesome. Well, Terry, thank you for your time in the conversation, giving us your insights about the industry, learning a little bit about who you are.
Great to have you, Adam. Great seeing you and reconnecting
conversation.
again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Adam Simmons with Project Geospatial. We will talk to everybody next time.